Coming up on Primetime Lawmakers' final passage today, the FY 2012 amended budget. The little budget will reflect the announcement by Governor Nathan Deal's office that February revenues were above estimates. A bill allowing local governments to establish a registry for vacant or foreclosed properties clears the Senate. Disagreement over exactly what constitutes vacant property caused healthy debate. Taylor's Law gains final passage in the House. The measure, named for an 18-year-old leukemia victim, allows for special hunting permits for terminally ill children. The progress of the state budget is on our agenda tonight, which is especially timely following final passage of the amended budget today. Tonight, Appropriations Chairman Representative Terry England and Senator Jack Hill will join us on set. And for the best political analysis on the air with our reporter roundtable tonight, we welcome Tom Crawford, editor of the Georgia Report, and Jim Galloway, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution political insider. For Monday, March 12, 2012, the 31st legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly, this is Primetime Lawmakers. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Lawmakers, GPB's nightly coverage of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Scott Slade. Let's go live to the Capitol where Sandra Parrish reports the FY 2012 amended budget achieved final passage today. Good evening, Sandra.
Good evening, Scott. The mid-year budget ends up actually a bit smaller than first anticipated. House Appropriations Chair Representative Terry England says it was based on new revenue estimates from the governor.
Since the bill left you, the governor has revised the revenue estimate down slightly from $18.55 billion to about $18.08 billion, about a $47.1 million decrease. In an abundance of caution, this move was made when the revenue numbers for February indicated a leveling out of the collections. We learned last week that the revenues for the year were up 7% for that month, and the 4.9% still running for the year. So we're still very close on the target at this time, just trying to be cautious. This is basically the same document passed out of this House a couple of weeks ago unanimously.
Both England and Senate Appropriations Chair Jack Hill say little changes were made by either chamber. One note of significance, though, the Department of Transportation will receive $6 million to aid in economic development for deal-maker-type projects.
If a industry that's coming to a community, they need a rail spur or need a small driveway into the economic development area, I need something that DOT can provide this service, we thought that's a good start. It's not much money, but $6 million will go a long way to try to help encourage economic development.
The budget changes passed unanimously today in both the House and Senate. We'll have more on exactly what's included in the mid-year spending plan coming up when both appropriation chairs join Scott on set later in the broadcast. A very special piece of legislation named for a young lady who died in November received final passage in the House today. Taylor's Law, named for 18-year-old Taylor Gramling, allows special privileges to those 21 and younger who face a terminal illness and want to hunt before they die.
Proud that her name lives on, and I'm hoping that it helps other kids.
Andrea Moat says hunting was one of her daughter's final wishes. A month before she died of leukemia, she got to see it happen.
It was her wish that she be allowed to go deer hunting, and unfortunately, due to the fact that she had leukemia, she could not pull the bow during bow season, which would have been the time that she could have gone to hunt. So Jeff Foxworthy allowed her to hunt on his plantation, giving her the opportunity to use a rifle and shoot during off season.
And thank goodness she actually was able to kill a deer. First time ever going hunting, and she actually did kill one that day.
The measure, which now goes to the governor's desk, would allow all kids with terminal illnesses to do the same.
You hear about the Make-A-Wish Foundation. This is patterned after that to enable young hunters that may be facing the end of their lives the opportunity to go and take on that big hunt that they've always wanted to do but weren't able to do that. And this allows the commissioner to issue that special authorization to do that. And it may not be the correct season, but for that very narrow, limited window of time, they can do that.
You know, I just love her and miss her, and I hope other kids can benefit from this and be able to do things they want to do and not let this cancer hold them back.
Sponsors of the measure tell me they will ask Governor Deal to go ahead and sign the bill as soon as possible. On the same day Georgia's annual domestic violence fatality review comes out, a Senate committee passes out a measure to compel victims of domestic violence to testify against their spouse.
We rank 6th in the nation in family violence fatalities. Folks, that's a statistic, that's a ranking that we should never want to see in this state.
The report finds in just the last year, over 100 women have died from domestic violence. The bill by Representative Ed Lindsay would eliminate the spousal privilege in domestic violence cases and give those victims as well as sexual assault advocates confidentiality rights.
What we have found in this state is instead of this privilege protecting the marital unit, it has in fact turned into a weapon in which far too often the perpetrator will coerce the victim in the household into not testifying.
We already penetrate this privilege. Cruelty to children already exists on the books that says when children witness physical abuse that leaves marks where parents, that's the sanctity we're talking about here. She already can invoke. What we're asking you to do is protect her.
One of the whole issues about the domestic violence community is empowering women to take back their lives and make their decisions. And this bill basically takes that situation and says, well, I know you say you don't want to testify, but we're going to think for you.
The measure passed out of committee with only one vote in opposition and now goes to the Senate Rules Committee to wait a vote before the full Senate. Scott?
All right, thanks very much, Sandra. A slew of legislation surrounding women's health issues, including abortion and contraceptives, passed both chambers on crossover day. But Republican lawmakers' decision to disallow amendments on a bill blocking state health insurance from funding abortion brought some emotional speeches to the Senate floor today.
Wednesday, when we engrossed Senate Bill 338, I just wanted to remind our body that when we engross a bill, we actually stop the process. We have a process in place, and I feel that because my amendment was not given the option to be added to a bad bill didn't have an opportunity to get any better.
The freedom that is being attacked is not a religious freedom. The freedom that's being attacked is the freedom of women to determine in their own private lives how to manage their health decisions. And it is a right that has been very clearly stated by the Supreme Court to be within our constitutional rights. It is a right to privacy.
It was said from this well numerous times in the debate last week, and again today, the suggestion is made that the only people that can have an opinion on this issue are people of a particular sex, and that is wrong. If people came to this well debating any issue and tried to say that because of your race or because of your sex that your opinion doesn't matter or it doesn't matter as much, people in this chamber and people outside of this chamber would be outraged.
Senator McCoon is the sponsor of the bill that would exempt Georgia 501c3s from having to provide contraceptive coverage for their employees. That measure passed the Senate on Wednesday, as well as the bill eliminating abortion coverage for state employees through the state health benefit plan. Both of those measures await committee assignment in the House. A bill that would prohibit abortion after 20 weeks passed the House last Monday and is now on the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. None of those measures has yet received final passage, and we'll keep you updated on that. Now, with more from the Senate, we'll head back to the Capitol where Sasha Horn is standing by. Sasha, it looks like the home foreclosure crisis has another Georgia connection.
Good evening, Scott. Whether foreclosed or vacant for some other reason, the Senate approved a measure today that would allow city and county governments to operate a centralized database of abandoned homes. Now, the goal of this measure is to cut down on crime and have a better accountability of who owns the property. Now, if your local city were to implement this system, there are fees involved. $100 to list your house in that database, and you could be hit with a $1,000 fine if you fail to do so. Now, opponents of the measure, including Senator Vincent Fort of Atlanta, says those fees are too steep, and his constituents don't support the measure.
What they have told me is that they do not support a bill which strikes at the heart of local control of these kind of matters.
Senator, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and that is the heart of the issue, because us in the metro area have very different problems than the rural area, and we want local control. The city of Atlanta has stepped up to the plate. They have created their own registry.
Now, as you heard there, the city of Atlanta already has a similar database, but some concerns were raised for what that might mean for more rural communities. Now, that bill passed the Senate and now goes on to the governor for his signature. And another measure heading to the governor's desk that easily passed the Senate is a bill that creates a clearinghouse where local school systems may offer their online classes to students of other local school systems. And while those bills are off to the governor, some still have a little bit of a ways to go. The Public Safety Committee met today to vote on legislation that would make it tougher for metal thieves to resell those stolen items, specifically tractor-trailer parts.
Protects the legitimate ownership or the legitimate owner from having these things just stolen and scrapped, because if it sets a minimum value that if that is if that value of that trailer exceeds that, then they have to have a title to be able to scrap it. And so, you know, while there may be legitimate reasons that a trailer is being taken out of service, it shouldn't be because somebody's stolen it and trying to just cash in on it. So this is something that we think protects the trucking industry and those owners of some very expensive pieces of equipment.
Another measure that passed the committee clears up the law that makes it illegal to flee from police.
That was something that was brought to us by a number of people in law enforcement and in the judiciary. There seemed to be some confusing language that was in the code that dealt with eluding a police officer.
Now, those measures are off to the Senate Rules Committee to be placed on the calendar for a vote. Scott, back to you.
Thanks very much, Sasha. Every year, there's one essential duty the legislature must perform: establish the budget for the state of Georgia. Tonight, we're joined live in studio tonight by two very important men in that budget process: the chairmen of the House and Senate Appropriations Committee, Representative Terry England and Senator Jack Hill. Thank you both for joining us this evening.
Glad to be here. Good to be here, Scott.
Well, here we are. The latest developments, final passage of the FY 2012 amended budget today. Senator, are you surprised it went smoothly?
No, there really were not very many differences, and the ones that were, we were able to work out those differences. So 13 is similar but bigger, and so I'm sure there'll be some things to work out there.
Representative England, were you pleasantly surprised at the revenue estimates coming up?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always good to see everything start rebounding. I mean, not just from a standpoint of looking at the state, but understanding that as a whole, that the economy is picking up, and that means that Georgians are going back to work, and when that happens, they spend more money on things, and it just, you know, trickles down.
You said something from the well when you were describing the budget to your colleagues, that it seems like we are out of I want to do a word about a recessionary period, a recessionary atmosphere now.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it seems as we look at revenue, as it's starting to increase again, that people are feeling a little bit more secure in spending. You know, unemployment rate has dropped some, so as that starts happening, people free up a little bit and feel a little more comfortable spending discretionary income.
Senator, are you comfortable with this process? It moves very, very quickly. We don't have the internecine fights, conference committees, that sort of thing here. I mean, are you relieved it went this smoothly? Would you like to have more to do?
No, not really. You know, the times were tougher when we had a little money to spend. When you don't have any money, the good news is we're not cutting. I think there are two times that are tough. That's the times when you have money and the times when you're really cutting budgets to the bone. Those are really tough times. This year, it's a little more of a flattened out process, and so it's not as difficult. At the same time, we've convinced everybody we really don't have any money.
Well, there are two budgets. I want to show the folks at home this double screen right here that we have, showing that we do have an amended budget, a supplemental budget, or the little budget if you like, and a big budget that moves things forward. The big budget takes effect in July based on projected revenues. The little budget changes the big budget based on actual revenues. And if anything, it sounds like the actuaries are getting kind of close to the game right here, are they not?
Well, that's true, and you know, when we're not in a free fall anymore, the actuaries turn out to be a little more correct. But you know, the consumer confidence seems to be picking up, and we've, you know, except for a couple of exceptions the last couple of months, revenues have generally trended upward, and that's the trend we want to see.
How will that $6 million project fund for the DOT that you mentioned earlier in our broadcast tonight, how will that be administrated? Would that be on an application basis or what?
Yeah, DOT gets these requests now for economic development projects, and they have to find the funds somewhere if they're able to do it at all. And this will have a designated pot of money that they will have to use. Not that they weren't already finding it, but it will certainly lay out a pot of money that communities that are finding industry and bringing prospects in can know that the DOT can meet their responsibilities as well.
And now that we're dealing with real numbers here on the amended budget, which now goes to the governor, right? I mean, you all have worked all that out. Are there any big losers or any big winners?
I wouldn't categorize anyone as a big loser or a big winner. We're still, like Senator Hill had mentioned, we're kind of flattening out. And so we've not had to go in and do the drastic cuts we've done in the past. Everything's kind of calming down. It's kind of the sea after the storm has come through. It kind of settles back down for a little bit, and then it starts getting choppy again. But we're kind of in that phase right now where everybody gets to sit back and take a little bit of a breath and say, okay, well, it looks like the worst is over, and we'll kind of wait and see where we're at after this.
So smoother water as we move on into the next year?
The 13 budget was more about growth than anything else. We funded the growth in K-12. We funded some growth in higher education. We funded growth in Medicaid. It's all about meeting the demands of a growing state. And of course, the state continues to grow even after the census. We've grown 128,000 people. So we're in a growing state, and we're having to respond to that with our budget, but there's not much else besides that, though.
Yeah.
Now, how do you deal with something as big as Medicaid and the surprises that might come down the pipe there? I mean, it's hard to tell how many people are going to get sick.
You basically go back and look at prior years and try to project from that, but the problem you have there is there's no predictability to illness, so you have no way of knowing how many people will be sick on a given day. So you try to do a best educated guess you can when it comes to something like Medicaid or state health benefit plan. You budget the best you can and hope and pray really that you're going to be as close as you can be and err to the side of good versus erring to the side of being short.
Big items like that, Senator?
They scare you to death because the swings in Medicaid, for example, are just so huge, hundreds of millions of dollars, and that has actually become the struggle we have with cash flow in the state is that flow of funds out coming in and out, and it's it's a matter of real concern, but we've got to deal with it. And of course, there are a lot of unknowns in the future as it pertains to national health care as well.
Right. And then you have some of the little things that come along. For instance, there was a concern where some county tax commissioners that they wouldn't have enough money to buy printers to move license tag renewal lines along quickly enough. How do you handle those little things that come along?
Well, we're actually going to talk considerably more about that over the next few days, just trying to figure out how to handle that.
We're going to look at the whole process and what county government's doing for us and try to work out a solution. Frankly, though, the executive branch didn't put any money in to handle that, and so we've got to address it and try to come up with something. And maybe we can, but right now they perform a service and do receive some fees as well.
So you take them as they come, items like that. What about the designated funds? We haven't talked about that for a while. Things like the tire, cleanup funds and that sort of thing. Do you see a time when those might actually start going to some of those uses instead of back to the general fund?
Well, we actually have a pretty good record of putting those funds back in. Only during the recessions have we dropped back. I took a look at it today, and we were at 80 to 90% of funding those programs.
Well, that's news. Okay.
Except for 04 and 05, and then 9, 10, and 11 as well. So what Georgia has done is we've tried to, just like a family does, in looking for coins in the mattress or whatever. When times were hard, we've had to use every resource we had in order to balance our budget. We've had unusual times, and we use all these funds, but our return has always been to go back and start funding the most necessary of these programs. There's some legislation that's flowing through that will address that, but frankly, when you look back, we've done that in the past, and I think we would in the future as well.
Thanks very much for you both being here and all the hard work. We'll check back with you. Great to have you.
Thanks, Scott.
And now primetime lawmakers Jackie Britton joins us live at the Capitol with other headlines from around the state. What's going on, Jackie?
Thanks, Scott. Here are your state headlines for tonight. Residents of Monroe County want to know what's making them sick. Recent testing has found that the Middle Georgia County near Macon was unusually high levels of uranium and radon in its water, particularly affecting residents who use well water. Today, officials of the Middle Georgia Regional Commission announced plans to finish a grant application by April. The federal grant would offer assistance for residents to hook up to public water lines. And if you're in the market for a new job, have your resumes ready if you want to work in manufacturing manufacturing near Athens. Equipment maker Caterpillar announced today that it is already accepting job applications for its new plant in the Athens area. Caterpillar says its plans to begin production in late 2013 and is looking to hire 1,400 workers. Available jobs are in management and supervisory positions, jobs that require a college degree and some work experience. For more information on these and other stories, visit www.gpb.org/news. And that will do it for tonight. For your headlines around the state, Scott, back to you.
Hey, thanks very much, Jackie. We got to take a short break in primetime lawmakers. Don't go anywhere. There's much more to come as we bring two of the best political journalists in the state. Right up when we come back, I'll be joined by Tom Crawford of the Georgia Report and Jim Galloway, the AJC political insider. We'll put it into perspective. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Primetime Lawmakers. Time for our Reporter Roundtable, part of the show where we tap our stable to the best political journalist in the state. Tonight I'm joined by Tom Crawford, editor of the Georgia Report, and Jim Galloway, the political insider for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Great to have you both here. And of course, the big news today, final passage of the 2012 amended budget. Tom, are you continually amazed at how smooth it goes?
Well, Jack is right. It's not usually this easy for them, but as he said, if you don't have a whole lot of money to spend or a whole lot of money to cut, it makes the process a lot easier.
Jim, any notable winners or losers along the way here in this process, or they just have to do what they have to do?
They have to do what they have to do. The winner and loser formula really doesn't kick in until you get to the big budget. You're basically filling in on the little one. You're trying to make up for extra students who showed up to school, extra Medicaid payments that you didn't anticipate. So you're backfilling.
And the extra revenue that showed up here to help to grease the process along, Tom, the extra money that they're reporting. Where did that money wind up coming from? There's just tax collections were better than they thought?
Just tax collections, right. Sales tax and individual income tax are what give you most of your state revenues, and there's been a rebound in both areas, as Jack noted, because the economy has been getting better. So that's just simple growth.
And the best part of this is that generally speaking, state and local governments are the last to recover in a recession. And the fact that we have state revenues coming back, that's a good sign for the general economy, I think.
Yep, it certainly is. On to things that have not happened yet. The Charter Schools Amendment in the state Senate. Both your thinking on that. Tom, does it even come up for a vote before they get through?
Oh, I have to think they'll bring it up for a vote at some point. There is a lot of arm twisting going on that particular bill. We have a situation, Scott, where because it's a constitutional amendment, it takes a 2/3 majority, and there are 2 votes short of getting that 2/3 majority unless they can get a couple of Democrats to go with a Republican majority. So that's where the struggle is going on right now, to try to peel off those 2 votes there.
And the Democratic senators, Jim, are in an enviable position here to have some sway.
They still right now they have the clout to maintain this. We have to take you back to the real story of this. Goes back 6 months to redistricting, when the Republicans exercised their clout and redrew the state district lines, and a lot of these Democrats are going to be shoved out of office. They've got no reason to cooperate with state Republicans on this.
So they can make some deals.
Theoretically, they could, and I've heard that in one instance they were trying to get a Democratic senator from South Georgia maybe to come in and vote with them if in return he would agree to switch parties, and they might try to draw him into a little district. But he indicated to them he wasn't really interested in doing that, and as Jim just said, they got nothing to lose. They might as well go out with guns blazing.
Go ahead. Now, come November, the situation could change because Republicans could pick up that constitutional supermajority, and then a charter bill would pass through.
E-fairness, the internet sales tax. Do either one of you see that going anywhere? Is that going to even be brought up?
There's still some hope for it. I was talking to some people today about it in the Capitol, and right now what they're doing is they're trying to generate the local support. This is e-fairness. Basically, is about subjecting internet purchases to the state sales tax, and when you do that, you also subject those same purchases to local sales taxes. And what they're trying to do now is create this local campaign of local school districts, local cities and counties to contact their legislators and say, we'd like that extra tax revenue.
Is it falling on deaf ears, Tom?
It's not falling on deaf ears, and I think this is something, Scott, that will eventually happen, but this is a fairly significant change in tax policy. It's one that might take a year or two to push across the finish line, but they're getting a lot of the foundation laid in this session.
And quite frankly, it's not something that you want to lay out the language and have it lying around a whole long time while they're in session. This once this is introduced, it will move fast.
Speaking of laying out the language, one of the governor's linchpin economic initiatives was the exemption of sales tax on energy and manufacturing. If either one of you heard of any language of that bill coming around, is it going to come up even on a basis where they wind up phasing it in over several years?
I would think that it's got to. It's an election year. You have to have something to run on in November. So I think we'll see that at minimum.
And some of the social issues, Tom, that have come up, the abortion issues, state testing for benefits, that sort of thing. Are these going to die in the houses where they originated and just make election year fodder, or are they going to go anywhere?
I think they'll go somewhere. I think a few of them will make it through the House, and a lot of these, the feeling is if they can get these out there, that's really going to fire up their base, the Republican base, of course, and get them enthusiastic about voting in November. So I think there is a motivation to try to get some of these through the House, certainly.
Jim?
Well, I think what you're going to see is, for instance, the fetal pain bill that passed the House last week and moved to the Senate. There's some I don't want to say subterfuge here, but there's some internal politicking here. I would expect that the Senate will make some changes to that bill to force it back to the House and it will have the additional benefit of delaying that bill a little bit.
Tom, final seconds here. What are you watching in the next few days?
Well, as we were saying, I think the charter school amendment is one that's got to pop out here at some point. They've got too much invested in that issue to let go of it, so we're going to see something happen on that front.
Jim, how about you? What are you looking for?
Well, we're finally seeing some of the motivation behind Governor Nathan Deal's removal of Terry Nesbitt as Adjutant General in Georgia, and I think we're going to see some more details be coming out on that.
Okay, we'll watch for that. Many thanks to both of you for joining us this evening.
Sure.
We will watch and be informed. It's always great to have you here. Lawmakers will not be seen tomorrow, so the GPB can bring you live coverage of the Inventure Prize competition at Georgia Tech. See the best and brightest inventors in the state as they compete to see who will be the best. Be sure and tune in tomorrow night at 7 for Inventure. Live coverage of Day 32's House and Senate action will, as always, be available on our website, gpb.org/lawmakers. When Primetime Lawmakers returns on Wednesday, it's Day 33 and the final legislative day of the week. I'll be joined in studio for live analysis by Bill Crane, political analyst with CSI Crane, and Buddy Darden of McKenna, Long, and Aldridge. Plus all the latest news from under the Gold Dome. That's Wednesday on Primetime Lawmakers at 7. Tomorrow will be a session day, but we'll be back with you on Wednesday. If you missed any part of this broadcast, you can catch Primetime Lawmakers when he repeats at 5:30 tomorrow morning. Now, coming up next on GPB, country pop legends on My Music. That begins a great night of programming right here on GPB. And that's our broadcast for this 31st legislative day of the 2012 session. I'm Scott Slade. Thanks for joining us. Join us Wednesday night at 7 for the next edition of Primetime Lawmakers. Hope you have a great night.
This is a GPB original production.